Most people lose to their own mind before life ever challenges them. But what if you could silence fear, destroy anger, and control every negative thought the moment it appears? Negative thoughts are not your identity. They are visitors, loud, emotional, and temporary. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology. They knew that the mind can either be a prison or a kingdom, depending on how you rule it. Today you choose to rule it. Every fear, every spike of anger, every wave of anxiety begins in one place: your perception. What you think about an event becomes more powerful than the event itself. A Stoic does not let the mind run wild. A Stoic trains the mind to obey. When fear rises, remind yourself, I control my response. Fear does not control me. Your breath slows, your heart steadies, and suddenly the situation becomes manageable. When anger surges, remember, this moment is testing my character, not my strength. The world can provoke you, but it cannot make you react. That choice always belongs to you. Your thoughts are not facts. Your emotions are not commands. They are signals. They ask for attention, but they do not deserve authority. The Stoic mindset teaches you to observe without absorbing, to feel without being ruled, to step back and ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, you release it. If the answer is yes, you take action. Peace is not the absence of danger, challenge, or pressure. Peace is the mastery of your reactions to them. Negative thoughts lose their power the moment you challenge them. Fear disappears the moment you face it. Anger dissolves the moment you refuse to feed it. You become untouchable the moment you practice discipline over impulse. You are strongest when you respond with clarity instead of chaos. This is the Stoic way: calm over confusion, reason over reaction, courage over fear, strength over anger, self-command over emotional storms. And if you walk this path daily in your thoughts, in your speech, in your decisions, negative thoughts will break before you do. Fear will fade before your courage. Anger will shrink before your discipline. You don't destroy negative emotions by force. You destroy them with understanding, wisdom, and mastery. Stand unshaken. Think clearly. Act with purpose. And watch your mind transform into your greatest weapon. This is how you conquer fear. This is how you silence anger. This is how you destroy negative thoughts. With the Stoic mindset, negative thoughts are powerful only when you allow them to define you. They enter quietly, sometimes disguised as self-doubt, worry, or internal criticism, and before you realize it, they begin shaping your mood, your decisions, and even your sense of worth. But the truth is this: negative thoughts are not your identity. They are temporary. They are passing clouds moving through the sky of your mind. And the Stoic mindset teaches you to see them exactly as they are: fleeting, fragile, and powerless without your permission. Most people believe that if a thought appears in their mind, it must mean something. They assume every inner voice is important. But the Stoics understood that the mind often behaves like an untamed animal, running in every direction without purpose. A random thought does not reflect your character. A moment of fear does not mean you are weak. A flash of anger does not mean you have failed. These are simply mental events, not permanent truths. And once you begin separating yourself from these intrusions, they lose their ability to shape your life. Consider how a negative thought usually works. It enters uninvited, you notice it. Then instead of releasing it, you hold on to it, question it, fight with it, replay it, analyze it. Soon it becomes bigger than it ever was. The The Stoics teach that suffering often comes not from the thought itself, but from the attention you give it. The thought is the spark, your reaction is the fire. The moment you stop feeding that spark, it dies out on its own. You are not the voice in your mind. You are the one who hears it. This simple realization is a turning point. Once you recognize that thoughts are separate from your identity, you can observe them without being consumed by them. You can watch them rise and fall, come and go without losing your inner balance. Instead of acting automatically, you gain the power to respond intentionally. In Stoicism, the mind is seen as a garden. Positive thoughts are seeds of strength, clarity, and courage. Negative thoughts are just weeds, common, stubborn, but removable. A weed growing in your garden does not mean the garden is bad. It simply means it needs maintenance. And your awareness, your discipline, and your calm observation are the tools you use to keep your mental garden healthy. Your identity is built from your choices, not your impulses. Your character is shaped by your actions, not your thoughts. Your worth is determined by how you respond, not what you feel. Every time you choose not to attach yourself to a negative thought, you strengthen your mind. Every time you refuse to believe everything you think, you gain freedom. And every time you remind yourself that these thoughts are temporary, they lose their power. Imagine watching your thoughts like waves on a shore. Some waves are soft, others are violent. Some carry calmness, others carry fear or anger. But you remain on the shore watching. You don't get dragged into the water. You don't drown in the emotion. You simply observe each wave rise, break, and disappear. This is what it means to detach from negative thoughts, not to deny them, but to see them without surrendering to them. A Stoic mind understands that inner peace is not the absence of negative thoughts, but the ability to see them clearly and remain unaffected. You don't need to fight them. You simply need to recognize that they are not you. Once you stop giving them authority, they eventually fade like echoes in an empty room. When negative thoughts visit, let them visit, but never let them stay. You are the ruler of your mind. The thoughts are not the ruler of you. You cannot control the world around you, but you can always control the world within you. This truth is the foundation of inner strength. Life will constantly throw challenges, unexpected events, and difficult people into your path. Situations will shift suddenly, plans will collapse, and emotions will rise without warning. But none of these things have the final say over your life. What truly matters is not what happens, but how you respond to what happens. This is the core of Stoic wisdom, the freedom to choose your reaction, even when you cannot choose the situation. Most people suffer because they try to control the uncontrollable. They try to change people, bend circumstances to their will, or demand certainty from a world that offers none. The more they cling, the more frustrated and powerless they feel. But the Stoic mindset reverses this approach. Instead of exhausting energy on things that cannot be shaped, it directs full attention toward the only territory you truly own: your thoughts, your actions, your reactions. Events are neutral. It is your interpretation that gives them meaning. The same situation can break one person and strengthen another. One person sees failure and falls apart. Another sees failure and learns. One person becomes angry at an obstacle. Another becomes wiser because of it. The event is the same, only the response differs, and that difference makes all the difference. Your response is your power. It cannot be taken from you, influenced without your permission, or controlled by anyone else. When something happens, there is always a brief space before your reaction. That space is where your freedom exists. Most people react instantly, driven by impulse, emotion, or habit. But Stoic discipline teaches you to slow down, enter that space of clarity, and choose your response with intention. That moment of awareness is where emotional mastery is built. Imagine facing a difficult moment, a harsh comment, a disappointing outcome, a sudden fear. The situation may be unpleasant, but your response determines its impact on you. If you react with anger, the event becomes heavier. If you react with fear, the moment grows larger. If you react with self-pity, the situation feels overwhelming. But if you respond with calmness, understanding, or patience, the situation loses its ability to control you. When you focus on your response, you shift from being a victim of life to being the author of your story. Even when you cannot change what is happening, you can always choose who you become because of it. Every challenge becomes a training ground. Every disappointment becomes an opportunity to practice resilience. Every trigger becomes a chance to strengthen your character. Control your response, and you gain stability. When everything around you is chaotic, your calmness becomes your anchor. When people try to provoke you, your discipline becomes your shield. When life becomes unpredictable, your inner balance keeps you steady. And this steadiness builds confidence, the kind of confidence that does not depend on perfect conditions, but on inner strength. A Stoic does not seek a life without difficulty. A Stoic seeks to become the kind of person who remains unshaken by difficulty. You cannot always control what comes your way, but you can always control what you make of it. You decide whether an event becomes a burden or a lesson. You decide whether fear becomes a cage or a motivator. You decide whether anger becomes a weapon or a warning. This power is always in your hands. When you understand this, you no longer fear situations. You no longer chase control where it cannot be found. Instead, you master the only thing you truly can, your response. And once you master that, no situation can dominate your mind, steal your peace, or shake your character. You become strong not because life is easy, but because your reactions make you unbreakable. Fear and anger do not simply appear out of nowhere. They are born from the meaning you attach to situations. Two people can face the exact same event, yet one remains calm while the other falls apart. The difference is not the event, it is the perception. The Stoic mindset teaches that emotions are shaped by how you interpret what happens, not by what happens itself. When you understand this, you begin to see that fear and anger are not enemies attacking you from outside. They are reactions being created inside you, constructed by your thoughts, expectations, assumptions, and beliefs. Perception is the lens through which you view the world. If the lens is distorted, everything you see becomes threatening, overwhelming, or frustrating. Fear grows when you assume the worst about the future. Anger rises when you believe you are being wronged or disrespected. Both emotions come from an inner judgment long before you consciously feel them. You interpret a situation as dangerous, unfair, humiliating, or hopeless, and the emotion follows. Change the interpretation, and the emotion changes with it. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that the mind creates stories, and those stories generate your emotional reality. When something happens, your brain quickly labels it. This is bad, this is a threat, this is an attack, this is unfair. These labels ignite the emotional fire, but if you step back and question the label, the fire weakens. You begin to see that your first thought is not always the truth. Your first reaction is not always accurate. Your perception is not always reality. Fear often comes from imagining what might go wrong rather than what is actually happening. You project into the future, building scenarios that don't exist. Your mind creates shadows and then becomes frightened of them. The Stoic approach is to pull yourself back into the present moment and ask, what is truly happening right now? Most of the time, the reality is far less threatening than the story you told yourself. By observing your perception instead of surrendering to it, you break the chain that leads from thought to fear. Anger works in a similar way. It arises when you believe something should have gone differently, when people should behave better, when circumstances should be kinder, when life should follow your expectations. Anger comes from the belief that reality must obey your desires, but reality does not bend to anyone. The Stoics taught that anger is a sign that your expectations, not the event itself, are causing your suffering. When you adjust your perception, anger loses its grip on you. This does not mean you deny emotions or pretend everything is perfect. It means you examine the inner judgment creating the emotion. You learn to pause and ask, what belief is causing this feeling? Is it the belief that disaster is coming? Is it the belief that you deserve something better? Is it the belief that someone's behavior defines your worth? When you identify the belief, you can challenge it. Once you challenge it, the emotion begins to fade. Perception also shapes how you view challenges. A fearful mind sees obstacles as threats. A stoic mind sees obstacles as chances to grow stronger. A reactive mind sees problems as personal attacks. A disciplined mind sees them as opportunities to practice wisdom. Nothing changes outwardly, yet everything changes inwardly. By shifting perception, you transform fear into courage and anger into understanding. The most powerful realization is that your emotions reflect your thinking, not your fate. When you learn to question your automatic thoughts, fear becomes manageable and anger becomes temporary. You gain space between the event and your reaction. You begin to respond from clarity instead of impulse. This is where emotional mastery is born. You cannot control every situation, but you can always control the meaning you give to it. And when you control the meaning, you control the emotion. Perception is the birthplace of fear and anger, but it can also be the birthplace of calm, strength, and wisdom. The choice begins in your mind. Discipline is the foundation upon which a strong and calm mind is built. Without discipline, the mind becomes a battlefield of impulse, emotion, and constant distraction. With discipline, the mind becomes a fortress, stable, clear, and resistant to chaos. Stoicism teaches that true power does not come from reacting forcefully, but from controlling your inner world with consistency and intention. When you cultivate discipline, you separate yourself from the noise of sudden emotions, and you learn to choose clarity over chaos. Most people assume emotional strength means never feeling fear, anger, or doubt. But discipline reveals a different truth. Emotional strength comes from not letting those emotions dictate your behavior. You can feel anger without acting out of anger. You can feel fear without surrendering to it. You can experience negative thoughts without allowing them to guide your decisions. This separation between emotion and action is created through disciplined practice. The mind is naturally restless. It jumps from thought to thought, reacts quickly to triggers, and follows impulse over reason. Discipline is the training that brings the mind under control. Just as a muscle becomes stronger through repeated effort, the mind becomes steadier through repeated moments of self-control. Every time you choose patience instead of irritation, you strengthen your mental discipline. Every time you pause before reacting, you train your mind to listen to reason. Every time you stay calm in a moment that used to shake you, you build inner mastery. Discipline also means showing up for yourself even when it is difficult. It means practicing calmness when everything inside you wants to explode. It means choosing thoughtful action when impulsive reaction feels easier. It means holding on to your principles even when emotions try to pull you away. The Stoics understood that emotional storms are not defeated by force, but by consistency. A calm mind is not created in a single moment. It is built through daily practice, through reflection, through awareness, and through training your responses again and again. One of the most powerful aspects of discipline is the ability to pause. In that pause, the mind resets, the emotion weakens, the reaction becomes clearer. Without discipline, the pause does not exist, only instant reactions, driven by whatever you feel in the moment. But with discipline, the pause becomes a choice. You step back, observe the emotion, and decide how to respond. This is not suppression, it is mastery. It is the ability to stay aware while the emotion passes through you, without letting it take over. Discipline also strengthens your sense of identity. When you train yourself to act from values rather than emotions, you begin to see yourself differently. You stop feeling like a victim of your impulses and start feeling like the author of your actions. You realize you are capable of doing what is right even when it is difficult. This builds confidence, not the loud, temporary confidence that comes from ego, but the quiet, unshakable confidence that comes from self-respect. And when you practice discipline, negative thoughts lose their hold. They may still appear, but they cannot drag you into destructive patterns. They cannot control your behavior or break your focus. You acknowledge them, but you do not obey them. Discipline gives you the authority to say, I decide how I act, not my thoughts. And from that point forward, those thoughts begin to fade because they no longer serve a purpose. Discipline is not harshness toward yourself. It is a form of love. It is choosing your long-term peace over short-term emotion. It is investing in the version of yourself that stays calm, even in chaos. It is protecting your mind from being ruled by temporary impulses. When you practice discipline, you choose strength over reaction. You choose wisdom over impulse. You choose clarity over confusion. A disciplined mind is not easily shaken. It stands firm in the face of negativity, fear, and anger. It remains stable when emotions rise because it knows the difference between feeling something and becoming it. And in this stability, you find your greatest power, the power to navigate life with calmness, purpose, and control. Most people are ruled by their emotions because they never learned how to step back from them. They believe that whatever they feel must be true, that every emotion deserves a reaction, and that every internal storm must be fought or obeyed. But the Stoic mindset teaches something radically different. Emotions can be observed without becoming them. You can watch fear rise without panicking. You can see anger forming without lashing out. You can witness sadness or stress moving through your mind without letting it define you. This ability to observe rather than absorb is one of the most powerful forms of emotional intelligence and inner strength. When an emotion appears, your first reaction is usually automatic. You feel tension, pressure, or discomfort, and your mind immediately wants to respond. but this instinctive reaction is often the very thing that makes the emotion stronger. The Stoics understood that emotions gain power when you fuse your identity with them. When you say, "I am angry," instead of "anger is present," you transform a temporary feeling into a personal truth. The emotion becomes part of you. But when you step back and observe, "I notice anger in me right now," you create distance. You turn a storm into a passing cloud. This distance is not denial, it is clarity. You acknowledge the emotion without surrendering to it. You allow it to exist, but you don't allow it to dictate your thoughts or actions. You become the watcher of the emotion rather than the prisoner of it. And with every moment of observation, you weaken the emotion's control. Observation is a skill. It is the ability to pause and witness what is happening inside your mind without immediately reacting. Fear may arise, but instead of spiraling into worst-case scenarios, you notice the pattern. Anger may flare, but instead of exploding, you recognize the trigger. Stress may enter, but instead of drowning in it, you see how your thoughts are feeding it. This awareness creates space between the emotion and your response. And in that space, your power exists. The key is understanding that emotions are messages, not commands. Fear signals perceived danger. Anger signals perceived injustice. Sadness signals perceived loss. These signals can guide you, but they do not have the authority to control you unless you give it to them. When you observe an emotion, you treat it like information, not an order you must obey. This ability to observe rather than absorb also helps you avoid emotional escalation. When someone acts disrespectfully, your automatic response might be anger. But if you observe the emotion instead of absorbing it, you can ask, "Is this worth my energy? Is reacting going to help or harm me?" In many cases, the emotion fades simply because you chose not to feed it. The situation loses its emotional intensity because you refuse to amplify it. Observation also reveals that most emotions pass quickly when you don't identify with them. Fear may spike, but it drops rapidly if you don't chase the thought. Anger burns hot, but it cools faster if you stop replaying the trigger. Anxiety rises, but it dissolves when you refuse to believe the catastrophic stories your mind creates. The Stoics knew that emotions often fade on their own if you allow them to move naturally instead of resisting or feeding them. Over time, this practice reshapes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who is not thrown around by every feeling, someone who remains centered even when emotions move. Through you. Someone who can stay calm in the face of triggers, challenges, and emotional storms. This inner stability becomes a source of deep confidence and strength. You realize that you are not fragile, reactive, or unstable. You are aware, intentional, and in control. When you observe emotions without absorbing them, you reclaim your power. You protect your peace from being hijacked by temporary feelings. You make decisions from clarity, not impulse. You respond with wisdom instead of reaction. And you prove to yourself that you are stronger than any emotion that tries to control you. This is the Stoic way. Emotions may visit, but they never own you. You see them, you understand them, and then you let them pass like clouds across the open sky of your mind. True power has nothing to do with controlling the world around you. It has everything to do with controlling the world within you. When you master your inner world, your thoughts, emotions, and reactions, you become someone no situation can break, no person can provoke, and no challenge can overwhelm. This is the essence of the Stoic mindset, inner mastery. It is the recognition that nothing outside you can disturb your peace unless you allow it, and nothing inside you can control your life unless you give it power. Most people look for strength in the wrong places. They try to dominate situations, change people, or force outcomes to go their way. But this kind of control is temporary and fragile. The world is unpredictable. People are complicated. Circumstances shift without warning. If your strength depends on everything going the way you expect, then your strength will collapse the moment life becomes difficult. The Stoic path offers something different, something deeper and far more dependable, the ability to remain steady inside, even when the outside world is chaotic. Inner mastery begins with self-awareness. You learn to understand your thoughts instead of blindly believing them. You begin to notice emotional patterns instead of being dominated by them. You pay attention to what triggers you, not to blame the trigger, but to understand your response. Every moment of awareness gives you more control. You begin to see that you have choices. You can choose patience over anger, courage over fear, calm over chaos, clarity over confusion. These choices reveal your true power. The Stoics believed that the mind is like a kingdom, and you are the ruler. If you rule with discipline, wisdom, and calm judgment, your inner kingdom remains peaceful even during storms. But if you rule with impulse and emotion, chaos takes over. The outer world does not determine the condition of your kingdom, the ruler does. When you train yourself to respond thoughtfully, you protect that inner stability. You create a life where peace comes from within, not from perfect conditions. Inner mastery is also about accepting reality rather than resisting it. So much emotional suffering comes from fighting what is already happening. You become angry because something didn't go your way. You become fearful because something changed. You become anxious because you want certainty in a world that offers none. But when you accept reality, you stop wasting energy on what you cannot change. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It means clarity. It means adjusting your response instead of demanding that the world adjusts to your expectations. Another crucial aspect of inner mastery is the ability to choose your values over your impulses. Anyone can stay calm when life is easy. True strength shows when life becomes difficult. Will you stay disciplined when anger tempts you to react? Will you stay courageous when fear tries to convince you to hide? Will you stay patient when frustration rises? These moments determine your character. Every time you choose your values over your impulses, you strengthen the foundation of who you are. Inner mastery also brings emotional freedom. When you no longer depend on external validation, approval, or perfect outcomes. To feel stable, you become untouchable. No insult can define you. No setback can break you. No uncertainty can control you. You learn to carry your peace with you, independent of circumstances. This is not coldness. It is strength. It is the freedom that comes from knowing your worth does not rise and fall based on what happens around you. And when you master your inner world, you naturally become better at living in the outer world. You make clearer decisions because fear isn't clouding your judgment. You build healthier relationships because anger no longer controls your responses. You stay focused on your goals because distractions no longer drag you away. You handle challenges with wisdom instead of panic. Everything improves, not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. Inner mastery is not about achieving perfection. It is about building the strength to remain centered, intentional, and wise, even in the face of imperfection. It is a lifelong practice, but every step forward makes you more grounded, more resilient, and more powerful. When you choose to master yourself, you gain a kind of strength that the world cannot take from you. You become the calm in the storm, the anchor in uncertainty, the steady presence that cannot be shaken. This is true power. This is inner mastery. This is the Stoic way.